Hello, my spooky friends. This is John, your host, and welcome to another episode of Dairyland Frights, the paranormal podcast that covers everything spooky and creepy and mysterious in the Midwest. And tonight, I want to say something. I'm going to embarrass Deborah and hopefully put a little tear in her eye. But here's the thing. I've been very fortunate to meet a lot of people in my podcast that I never would have met. Okay. And some of these people are just super interesting, and some are motivating, and some are just like, are you sure you want to do that? Because that's really brave of you to do that. But Deborah takes it to a new level. I'm lucky enough to know her and I've had her on the show multiple times. She's like on Saturday Night Live, when you get to like number 5, you're in that echelon. Well, she's on 4 times, and I'm going to have her on it as many times as I can. And what's great about Deborah is, like I said, I count her as a friend, and I do everything I can do to support my friends. And she has it's Paranormal Paradigma, and I'll have her talk a little bit more about it, because I think some people are confused a little bit. And if you follow my Instagram or follow me on Facebook at all, you know I 100% support this woman. She's amazing. I'm lucky to have her on the podcast again. It's Debra Roque. Hello, Deborah.
Hello, John. You didn't tell me you were going to say these things before we started.
No, I wanted you to tear up a little bit. No, stop it. I gotta clean it.
Oh my God. No, I am speechless. Thank you so much. I don't even know what to say. That is just so kind and warm and heartfelt.
See, you
And I
deserve it.
no. Yes and no.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
Like, I want to be like, yes,
Stop
I do.
it.
And then at the same time, like, no, I don't. Like, it's like
Yes,
sort
you
of
do.
like, I'm working on it. But thank you. I
Bring
really
it
do
in.
appreciate it. Yeah.
Oh,
And I do
absolutely.
appreciate it. And your words ring very, very profoundly. So I really, really
Yeah.
appreciate that. Thank you so much.
And
Thank you.
the thing is about this, my spooky friends, if you listened before, she has great stories, and we love to talk about our stories. We have so much fun talking about them. But one of the things, again, Deborah, please talk about this. I know you like to be a little humble, but I'm going to brag you up. That's my job. I'm your agent now.
Okay. I need
You don't
one.
have to pay me anything. But one of the things I've seen, Deborah, over and over when I talk to paranormal investigators. So let's start with them. They'll talk about stories like they got really shook up on an investigation. I think I sent you, I don't know if you remember this, but there was a gentleman, Dave, from Midwest Spirit Seekers, shout out. And he talks about how he's on investigation and he was touched. Didn't know what it was. And then he went, the morning he woke up, he was sitting at a restaurant and he started crying. Now, if you see Dave on Instagram, he's a big guy. He used to be a prison guard. I believe he's a prison guard, but he worked at a prison. Yeah. So this guy, right? He doesn't look like a guy that's going to cry on you. He looks like a guy that's probably going to, and check out my Instagram. Please check them out. And I sent a message to Deborah and I said, hey, this is just weird. Check this out. And, I know you had a chance to look at it. And he was just so taken back. Like, how do you process that? Something from another, I don't know, plane of existence? I'm just throwing that out there. Touched him. What, I don't know. What do you want to add to that or elaborate on that, I guess?
So it automatically makes me think of, I guess, the population, the audience, the demographic, whatever, that I'm trying to focus on, especially with my work. And it's, the people who have these experiences and, are shocked by them or are trying to process them, understand them better, make sense of them, make meaning of them, right? Because
Yeah.
oftentimes I think what happens is that we're so focused on the paranormal being all the spooky,
Mhm.
scary, creepy
Mhm.
stuff, and we're
Mhm.
fascinated by the stories,
Yeah.
and we want to hear stories because it helps us feel validated. It gets us to feel,
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
there is a sense of community because we are not
Mhm.
alone in the sense that others have had similar experiences. But at the same
Yeah.
time, it's also like, you know, that feeling where you get spooked, but you're safe at the same time. So
Yeah.
people like to feel scared or excited in a certain way, but then also feel safe. And so the paranormal hits all these points, right?
Mhm.
But the thing is that when it comes to the actual experience, right, we're not really diving into the more subjective nature of these experiences, the emotions that come with it, the feelings, what we sense, and what
Mhm.
could that the consequences that those things bring about, right? So you're telling me
Mhm.
that Dave is a ghost hunter. He's done this stuff probably plenty of times. He's had his stuff go off, and it's always been part of the thrill to get the evidence. And yeah, we got a ghost, or we got some sort of EVP, and that is great. But then where are we now? When do we give it time, I guess,
Yeah.
to then speak about these more sensory, subjective components and emotional components that
Mhm.
come along with the paranormal experience? And I think that is largely ignored. Um,
Mhm.
and we have a population out there that is probably experiencing paranormal things, right?
Absolutely.
And they don't really understand the more spiritual nature of these events or of
Mhm.
these phenomena.
Mhm.
B, they are afraid of sort of like what I call coming out of the paranormal closet because of
Yeah.
what certain people, what their groups, like the groups that they hang out in, what they're going to say, be that work, family, religion, faith based, like whatever.
Yeah.
And then there's the stigma placed, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
then we don't really process this stuff. We just kind of say, yeah, that happened.
Mhm. Mhm.
But then what? You understand? Like
Mhm.
what about that event? And I think
Yeah.
that there's a large population that is ignored, and those are the people
Yeah.
that, you know, want to process this or trying to go like understand these experiences better, um,
Yeah.
not feel judged or ridiculed or mocked or stigmatized,
Mhm.
and they're
Yeah.
largely ignored. And so that's sort of who I focus on, and I try to sort of guide them through the process because because the paranormal is such a subjective experience.
Yeah.
um, Different experiences can mean different things for different people, and there's a lot to take into consideration. So I kind of help them sort of process it and get through the emotional and the ontological shock, and sort of come out of the closet and feel more authentic, and transition their beliefs and everything like
Yeah. And that's what makes you amazing. And it's not
that.
easy. You're doing something fairly new. And when you try
Yes.
something new, it's
Yeah.
not easy, nor should it be. Like if you blew up and I saw you on other TV channels and the media and everything, I'd be like, I know her. I know her. Of course, you have to give me some money or something. I don't know. I'd blackmail you. I know the dirt.
Okay.
I know where she started. I got it on tape. Uh, tape. Look how old I am.
Yeah.
But one of the things you said I thought was really interesting. Maybe you said this a couple weeks ago, and I apologize. I'm trying to catch up on all my social media.
Don't
But you said
worry.
something that if someone doesn't believe you, and maybe I'm not using believe right, and kind of chastise you or makes fun of you, you need not to get them out of your life, but explain that, like, hey, come on, like anything. If you have a negative influence on you personally, someone's bringing you down constantly. It's not about your life. It's also about the paranormal too. I mean, right? I mean, kind of,
Yeah. I think of the video that you're referencing is the one that I said, like, if you go to somebody to talk to about your paranormal experiences and that
yeah.
person dismisses your experience based off what they think the
Hmm.
paranormal is or what it should be, and they kind of just ignore, gaslight you, then you got to run. Because people that are like that, and they claim to be experts in the paranormal or have this type of
Mhm.
knowledge, they're not interested in you and your
Mhm.
experience. They're more
Yeah.
interested in them and their
Mhm.
reputation and their knowledge. You understand? So I find that I've seen it in some of these paranormal circles where like somebody will say, "Oh, I had this experience," and somebody's like, "That's crap. Like that's not how it goes." I'm like, "What would you
Yeah, yeah.
know? There's no paranormal experts. What we really need to focus on is the experience itself, which is completely subjective. So nobody can say anything about your feelings. You understand? Those are yours, and what you
Mhm.
sense, that's
Mhm.
also yours. So I think it's kind of, I don't know if it's, the word isn't hypocritical, but it's definitely arrogant to
Yeah.
say I am somebody who knows all this stuff about the paranormal. I can help you with your paranormal experience, or I can help with whatever, ghost hunting and stuff like that. And then somebody comes to you and you're like, oh yeah, well that's bullshit. You understand? That's not the way it goes. Oh,
Yeah.
demons don't do that. Well, shadow figures don't do it. Well, what the
Yeah.
hell would you know? And so
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
what I wanted to
Yeah.
say. Like, people, if you ever do open up to somebody and somebody starts to dismiss or sort of scoff or ridicule you because of your experience, turn
Mhm.
around. Like, turn around. Like, they don't care about
Yeah.
you. It's
Yeah.
about the reputation for them.
Yeah. That's really um un- it's very wise words, and it's very hard for people to accept that.
Yes.
One of the things, I listen to a ton of podcasts, and I listen to these podcasts where they talk about their true stories and ghosts and stuff. And people
Hmm.
will say something like this. Maybe you heard this before, dude. Where people will say, it's taken me 30 years to tell this story. And then they go on to tell this crazy story of when they were like 12, when they saw a demon in the hall and it's affected them. And then they always end the story like, I got chills writing this. And you're like, okay, some of that, is just, okay, kids are just be kids or whatever, right? But I'm guessing, even if it's a small percentage, right, Deborah,
Hmm.
someone that happened to them, right? They believe
Yeah.
that happened to them. They saw
Yeah.
that, whatever it is. And they've dealt with that for 30 years. This is what I'm talking about. And what you're talking about is like,
Hmm.
hey, don't keep that in you, right? Let's
Hmm.
talk about it and see what I can do, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I've heard a lot of those stories, especially on all the documentaries that I watch, and it's completely heartbreaking. And the other thing that I find heartbreaking too are the people that then go
Mm.
to like psychologists, and the psychologist dismisses them, and then they're turned into like
Mm.
they're referred to a psychiatrist, and then the psychiatrist puts them on antipsychotic, and that
Oh,
kills me
right.
because like there was this one story, I can't remember the documentary. Oh my god, I think it was called My Paranormal Nightmare, but I'm not sure if it was that one or
Sure.
they all become
Mm.
those.
Mm-hmm.
But it was very this like heartbreaking because her son had this horrible, you know, situation happen to him when he was a kid.
Mm.
And it really affected him. And he grew up and
Mm.
he was on antipsychotics, but then they never really dealt with the trauma. It was still there, And I
Mm-hmm.
was just like, that's not the way to deal with it. You understand? And this is
Mm-hmm.
part of the
Mm-hmm.
reason why I started this, because I see that again, there's just like a dire need for us to process these emotions
Yeah.
and the more subjective components of these experiences. And we're not talking about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And like Deborah, just like any professional, it's between you and your client or whatever you want to say. So don't be afraid. If you're listening to this, if we can help one person, right, Deborah? If we can help
Yes,
one person that comes to
absolutely.
you and says, hey, I need help. It starts with that and we build from that, but the main thing is we start with one and then we build, because then people are like, hey, I talked to Deborah. She was very kind. She was very understanding. I needed maybe something else. And
Hmm.
you put them in the path, obviously, to find whoever they needed. And, again, going back to paranormal investigators, one thing too, someone told me a story. I don't know why they wouldn't reach out to you after this, because I know I would. This paranormal investigator was in this haunted, I believe it was like a house or whatever, and they were in the basement, and all of a sudden they just froze, like totally froze. And the other
Mm-hmm.
paranormal investor came down there, and he's like, "What's going on? And the guy was just comatose. He's nothing. And so they were like, "Oh my God, he must have been possessed. There's a demon or something in here." So they're saying, all these things, doing the Lord's Prayer, doing all these things. And eventually he snapped out of it. And I
Yeah.
thought to myself when I'm talking to this gentleman, I'm like, okay, like how do you process that? How do you go on? You know what I mean? Even if it was
Yeah.
something you just got scared, like so scared because you saw an apparition, and maybe you just thought, I'm never gonna see anything. And you
Yeah.
saw something again, like I said, it comes back to you were 12 years old and you thought you saw a demon in the hall and it affected you so much, you just kept it inside you and it just built and built and built till it was nearly impossible to even talk about it. I was just,
Yeah.
I don't know, I just find that really interesting that people want to keep that down. Why, like we just talked about, why not bring it out, and have a discussion
Well,
with you?
yeah. And I know why people don't want to have a discussion about it, because I was that person. Like, one of the things that we have is like, we don't even believe ourselves. You understand? Like, it's almost like we have
Yeah, yeah.
all this self doubt about what we
Mhm,
experience. And it's so out of the ordinary, extraordinary, right?
mhm,
That we
mhm.
ourselves have trouble processing it ourselves and believing it
Yeah,
ourselves. And then so sometimes too, the other part of that is like it kind of triggers certain emotions and fears within you. So you're
mhm,
like, do I really want to talk about this? And then the last part is like, what are people going to think? You understand? Well, how am I going to sound saying this stuff? And
mhm,
these are
mhm.
all the parts that I like, with all like the steps that I help people sort of process and I guide them through, because it's a process. You understand?
Yeah,
It's not easy when you've
yeah.
been taught a certain thing, especially if you're in a
Mhm.
certain religion or, high society, if you're a professional, a scientist, or you have something that you
Yeah,
can lose, you have a
absolutely.
reputation, and all of a sudden
Yeah,
you're harboring this stuff inside you, and people are
yeah.
like, oh yeah, you got to tell your story, but it's like, it's not that
Mhm.
easy. Like, it's
Yeah,
not always that
yeah,
easy. And so
yeah.
helping people get the courage and over, like,
Um,
cross the fear threshold, right? So yeah,
yeah,
it's a lot.
absolutely. And it's no different. When my son was about 4 years old, Deborah, we were at, a water park, and I just looked away for a second, and he went down a water slide and went under the
Oh my god.
water. He was under for maybe like 2 seconds. I
Uh-huh.
grabbed him. Well, guess what, Deborah? He doesn't like swimming. He doesn't like getting in the
uh
pool. It's affected him since he's
yeah.
4 years old, and he's not a good swimmer. We spent a lot of money on swimming lessons for him because I'm like, okay, but he won't. If his buddy would be like, "Hey, let's go out fishing and get on the boat," no, he would not do it. And that's
Mm-hmm.
the same, or
Mm-hmm.
virtually the same thing here, right? He's not
Right.
going to tell me or tell his buddy he doesn't want to swim. He just says, I don't want to go, right?
Yeah.
It's mosquitoes, whatever, right? You
Yeah.
think of any other reason, then
Exactly.
I don't want to go. I can't swim or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's just it's unbelievable. So again, please reach out to Deborah, or even if you're like something's going on, you're just like, I don't know. Hey, go on Instagram, DM her. That's okay, right? You can be
Of
DM'd.
course. Yeah.
Yeah, and just say, even if you say, I know this sounds weird. She's not going to judge you. She's going to be like, okay, right, Deborah? You're going to be like, okay, maybe we start with a
Always.
simple phone call, right? So we don't
Mm-hmm.
do a Zoom or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
please
That's
do
how
that.
it is.
And the other thing is,
Absolutely.
just really quickly before we get to the cryptid stuff, is when you're cooking bacon in that one video,
Oh.
you never sent me bacon.
I didn't.
Fine, be
I
that
did
way.
not. I did not. The bacon
I
was
saw
definitely
that.
the star of that video. And I mean, I didn't even, that's just, who would have thought that I'd be cooking bacon in that video? I don't know. I guess that's what happens with Instagram and influencing, and you just need ideas for people to look at. So I guess the bacon worked.
It
I'm gonna use
worked.
more bacon.
Worked on
Yeah.
me. I made some bacon.
Exactly.
I was going to take really funny. I was going to film myself doing bacon, but then I thought maybe somebody threw it as like some weird, like I'm making fun of you or something. I'm like, oh, I better not
Oh
do
no,
that.
no, I
You
wouldn't
know,
have.
no.
Although it would have been fun.
Yeah. Maybe I'll do that sometime. See me cooking
Yeah.
bacon. Who doesn't like bacon? So yes, so please, I always put the links here in the episode, and please reach out. She's on Instagram, DM her, probably one of the easiest. She also, Deborah does have groups during certain months where you bring people together, right? And just have a
Yes.
discussion about different things. She puts it on Instagram. So Paranormal Paradigma. Please check that out. And yeah, go to a group. If you don't feel like, I don't feel like DMing her, I feel weird, go to a group. Just reach out to her. Gladly do that. Glad to do it. So,
Thank you.
what's fun tonight? Deborah said, "Hey, John, I got some cryptid stories I could tell you." And I said, "Hell yeah, let's do some cryptid stories." So, I'll let you take it away. Let's tell some cryptid
All right.
stories.
So I do want to preface this by saying that it is cryptid related, and you guys will have to, I guess, determine. You will be the judge of whether or not these
Ooh,
were true cryptid encounters or not, right? But I
okay.
will tell the story because actually this has not happened to me. Although, can I say, do I have a story from cryptid related one? I mean, I heard things, but I hadn't seen anything. So I'm gonna I'll put one in that I experienced, but who knows what that was. But most of these stories are from my husband, who at the moment he's doing stuff on the side. Like his side hustle is Uber, Lyft, delivery
Oh,
driving
sure.
situation.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So what
Great.
he does, yeah. So what he does is like he stays out late and does his
Mm,
rounds, and
sure.
because he's stayed out late so many days,
Right.
like he's seen some weird things.
Yeah, I
So the
bet.
first time, yeah, so the first time anything happened, so we moved here to Gainesville. I live in Gainesville, Florida. And for those of you who don't know Gainesville or Florida or Gainesville, Florida. So Florida obviously is a large, like a long state. We're right about 2 hours north of Orlando, 2 hours south of Tallahassee. So we're sort of like in the middle of the state, northern part of the state. So we're like north central Florida. And we're actually pretty near the Ocala National Forest, and the
Mm,
forest ties to a lot of the forests here in Gainesville also, like you can see that they, like in the map, like they definitely connect.
yeah.
And then as far as Gainesville itself, it's actually one of the cities in Florida that is very well, like there's a lot of green in this city. Like it's not like Miami, for instance, where it's just urban everything
Mhm.
and just concrete and tall buildings. This is a lot smaller. Our biggest player here, I guess, is the University of Florida, and there's a lot of greenery, right? There's just trees everywhere. So when we moved here, we lived with my sister. So my sister lives on off the main road, and the main road here, one of the main roads here is called Archer Road. And
Mm,
so on the other side of Archer Road, so like on the south side of Archer Road, yeah. On the south side of Archer Road, the university has their beef unit. So this is where they have some of their agricultural um buildings, and they have land and pasture for cows.
mhm.
And one night my husband was driving down the road there. I think it's called 26th Street. I think it's a 26th Street. So he's driving down and there's a vehicle in front of him. So it's late at night. It must be like something around 1 o'clock in the morning. He has an SUV in front of him. There's a space and then it's him, and they're driving down this road. And out of nowhere, just like suddenly, this
Yeah.
huge boulder just
Ooh.
flings over them, like between the two cars, and it
Yeah.
just goes from their side of the street, so they're heading north, goes
Mhm,
to
mhm.
the rest of the street, and it lands on the south side of the street, on the other
Ooh.
side of the street, like on the other side. And my
Yeah.
husband was just like, he paused for a second. He said
Sure.
that the other car in front of him noticed it too, because it was just such a large thing, and he heard it obviously, and
Yeah.
my husband saw it, and the guy in front of him stopped, and he was like, "Nah, f this, I'm not stopping." He like,
Oh yeah.
and yeah,
Yeah.
he was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
"No, I'm not gonna check that out."
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
he continued going. I remember him telling me, he was just like, "I don't understand what could have
Mm-hmm.
thrown such a
Mm-hmm.
huge rock
Mm-hmm.
so far to the other side of the street." He's like, "I
Yeah.
don't get it." Because at that, where I'm telling you, the only thing that's there is cows. He's like, "It wasn't a cow." He's like, "And it couldn't have been
Mm-hmm.
a person unless it was like a really big person. You understand? Like somebody really, really
Yeah.
strong." And at
Yeah.
that point, like,
Yeah.
why?
Yeah.
Like,
Uh-huh.
why? There's no houses there. You're not trespassing. People go through there all the
Yeah.
time. So that was like his first experience, and he was like, "Okay, well, that was weird." So
Mm-hmm.
few months pass. We finally move into our apartment, and last year, he kept doing the stuff that he was doing with Uber and Lyft and stuff. And this time he goes and he picks up, like, I think he's doing Lyft actually. Um, and he's going down another pretty big road. It's called
Mm-hmm.
34th, and he's heading down 34th, and he's going north on 34th, and he's approaching what would be 39th Avenue. So he's going north on
Mm-hmm.
34th, approaching 39th. There's like
Mm-hmm.
this space on the road where on the on the left side it's residential,
Mm-hmm.
and then on the right side there's some residential, there's some like school, and then there's like some woods too.
Yeah.
And on the residential side there's also woods. I'm telling you, it's like a lot of
Mm-hmm.
wooded area, trees sprinkled
Yeah.
all, I mean, houses all over.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's this patch. I think it was just over the bridge. Like there's like this bridge-like thing over a creek, and it keeps on going, and then it kind of loops down, like kind of slopes down. And he says in that area, it was about maybe 2 o'clock in the morning, between 1 and 3 in the morning, like again,
Yeah.
times whatever. He sees this pale creature,
Mm.
and he's like, "I've never seen anything like this." He
Yeah.
said the hind legs were bigger than the forelegs, like the front legs. The forelimbs were
Mm.
shorter, right?
Mm.
And it was on all fours when I saw it. So
Oh,
it was kind
okay.
of like hunched, right? Because
Yeah.
obviously
Okay.
the forelimbs are shorter. So it was like
Yeah.
hunched like this. And he
Mm.
said when my lights hit it, it like stood up on the hind legs with the little
Whoa.
arms or whatnot. And it looked at
Yeah.
him. When he looked at it, he's like, it looked like it had a cat's head,
Okay.
really like large eyes.
Yeah.
And he's like, you can see all the muscles, like the muscle definition.
Yeah.
And it looked at me for a second, split second, and it got back
Yeah.
down and it ran to a house, like into the front yard of a house.
Okay.
And he was just like, I don't know what that was. He's like, when it stood up at least 3 to 4 feet up. Like it was
Mm.
relatively large, whatever it was. He's like, it was pale, it looked gray white on my light. Muscle definition, like no fat on it, cat-shaped head, large eyes. And he didn't recall a tail. And he's like, I don't remember seeing a tail. I can just tell you that its front legs, like the front limbs were shorter significantly than the hind ones. And it kind of
Mm.
just stood up on the two hind legs, looked at me, went back down, and like ran toward the front of the house. Well, that happened. And I was like, wow, that's really weird. Okay, months pass. And he is
Yeah.
picking up people in Uber. And one of his clients, he's taking them to the house. And it
Yeah.
happens to be the same house where this creature had hid.
Oh. Okay.
And my husband is one that he will ask the questions even if they're like he does not care. You
Embarrassing.
understand? Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
he's no shame. Yeah. So he kind of stopped. Thankfully, the guy knew a little bit of Spanish because my husband speaks mostly Spanish. The guy was
Mm.
pretty fluent in Spanish, and my husband was like, "I need to ask you a question."
Mm.
And the guy was like, "All right, sure, Uber
Yeah.
driver,
Like,
whattever." Yeah.
yeah.
And, and
No,
then
I
he
will
was
not date
like,
you.
Yeah, I guess he must have been weirded out. And
Yeah,
my
yeah.
husband's like, I saw a creature and it was like this and like this and like this. And the guy just looked at him like wide-eyed,
Mm.
like kind
Oh,
of in shock. And
yeah,
he
yeah.
stayed quiet for a moment and then he was just like, "You've seen it too?" He's like, "I thought I was going
Ooh.
crazy." And my husband was like, "What do you mean? Like, what happened?" He was like, "So I was walking my dog one night." So he goes and
Yeah.
he's walking his dog. Crazy guy walking his dog like around 2 in the morning. Like, who does that? But like, he did it.
Yeah,
And he
yeah,
was
yeah,
out in that like wooded area in his house. Like, again, lots of little bushes and
yeah.
like wood tree stuff. He was in that area and the dog kind of like stops. You understand? You know when how dogs act, right? So like the
Yeah,
dog kind
yeah,
of
yeah,
just
yeah.
like stopped and was like,
Mhm.
"Oh, okay." And he was like, All right, well, what's happening?" And that's when he saw it. And the guy saw it and he freaked out and he booked it. Like he's like, "I even left my dog behind." Like he just booked it.
Well,
He
that's
was like,
nice.
I
Dude,
know, right? Good dad. So
dog.
I know. He just like he just left and he ran. And he was and I've never seen it since, but he described it the same way like my husband described it. It was they saw the same thing. He's like it had a cat's head, and he's like it looked like a cat, but it wasn't a cat. And I was like, huh,
Mm,
interesting. And so I think when my husband tells this story, and when he told this story, I mean, I was very inclined because, like, yes, I believe in the paranormal. Yes, I know that things exist, but
yeah.
that doesn't mean that every story or everything that happens to
Mm,
us is paranormal
mhm.
in nature. You understand? Like, you have to
Yeah,
still retain an ounce of skepticism and be discerning when it comes to these
absolutely.
things, because if not, then you go into like psychosis or something. Like, it can be like a very fine line. And so we have to be careful. And so, what I told him I was like, I would be inclined to believe this was like maybe an emaciated cougar,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
Because we have cougars here, mountain lions.
Yes, we yep.
Yeah. So the Florida Panthers here. And so I don't think that it would be here in Gainesville particularly,
Mhm.
but sometimes who knows.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'd be inclined to think that this was maybe an emaciated or sick panther. But two
Mm,
things get to me. One was like there was no eye shine. I forgot to mention that. Like there was no eye shine. It was just black eyes. And
mm,
two, the forelimbs are shorter than the hind limbs.
mm.
And so
Yeah,
cats don't have that. Like cats just don't have that unless it's some sort of, somebody's gonna say, oh, well, maybe it's some sort of disfigurement or, you
yeah.
know, um, mutation or something. Like
Sure, sure.
possibly, but
Absolutely.
highly doubtful, right?
Yeah.
So this is like one of those stories where I'm like, okay, that was very interesting. The fact that somebody else had seen it too was
Yeah,
also very
right, right,
interesting,
right.
right? So that happens. He felt validated. Everything was cool. Then months again passed. With me, I have heard, again, woods behind my house. I've heard noises sometimes. I'm just like, I don't know what that is. I'm not going to go check it out, but I don't know what that is. And one night, it was last year actually, and this happened in September. So I decorate really early for Halloween because I am like a Halloween girl.
I bet.
And yes. So I was decorated early. I put out some Halloween lights and like decor. And so I was coming outside to turn them off, which is what I did. And it was probably like around 11
Mm,
o'clock at night.
yeah.
And I go outside, turn it off, and sometimes I like to stay outside and look at the moon. Like I am that type of
Yeah,
person that I will like
sure.
marvel at the beauty and wonder of
No,
life.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Yeah.
and sometimes I'm actually looking for UFOs. Like I'm not gonna lie. So like I wanted to go and be outside, and I remember stepping out to like the sidewalk of where at my house. Like it's just a few steps forward under this big oak tree to look up beyond the oak tree to see the sky. And I look out and something tells me, like I just had this very intuitive, very strong
Mm,
feeling to
okay.
go inside.
All right.
Something just was like, go inside.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was weird because even I think I even said I almost have a distinct memory of like being like, okay. Like just being like, well, that's odd. So I go inside And as soon as
Yeah.
I'm closing the door, something knocks on my door.
Uh-oh.
And I'm holding on to the knob, and something knocks on the door.
Yeah.
And I freeze. Like I don't open the door right away. No, I'm not
Oh,
stupid. So I
no.
freeze, and I felt, and I know it was higher because I'm 5'1". Okay, so I'm standing 5 foot 1 inch, and this thing was higher than 5 feet 1 inch, whatever knocked on my
Mm.
door. And it reverberated down. Like you can feel, because the door is metal, you can feel it kind of vibrate down to the knob. And I
Yeah,
felt
yeah,
it at the
sure.
knob.
Yeah.
So I said, and it was just one powerful knock. Like it was just like, bah,
Mm.
and that's it. There wasn't another knock. There was nothing. And my husband was right next to me on the couch, and I was like, "Did you hear that?" And I'm here like holding on to the knob.
Yeah, yeah,
And he's like,
yeah.
"Bro, did you hear that?" And he's like, "What?" He was on his phone. I was like, "Something just knocked." And he's like, "Okay, hold on." So he gets up. He's like, "Do you want me to check it out?" I was like, "Yes, I want you to check it out. I'm not gonna check it out." So I'm not gonna do it. So he like I let go obviously, and he goes and he checks out. There's nothing. There's just
Mm.
nothing. Okay, cool. Put that aside. The next day,
Mm.
the next day, I have a
Mm.
podcast interview with Scream Queer Podcast, Ralph Anthony. And I
Okay.
tell him about the story. I tell the story on the podcast because it had just happened.
Yeah.
And we were like, oh my God, that was so creepy. Okay, cool. Same thing
Mm.
happens. He's finished the thing. I have my little Halloween decorations on. I'm going to turn off the
Mm.
decoration. And I do so.
Yeah.
And as I do so, I don't get this strong feeling, but I still like, well, I'm just gonna go
Mhm.
inside. You understand? Like,
Yeah.
it wasn't like a strong, like, oh my God, you gotta go inside, like the day before, but it was just kind of like, and I close the door.
Mm.
As soon as I do that
Mhm.
again, hand still on the door knob, I get another knock. This time my
Ooh,
daughter
okay.
was with me. My daughter was with me, and she was just like, what was that? And I was like,
Yeah, right?
I don't know. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna be brave now because my husband wasn't there. And so I tell her to move, and I open the door.
What?
Few seconds. No, this time I opened it because I was like, what is this? Like some idiot is fooling around with me. You understand? Like
Oh,
I was like, I
yeah,
am
yeah, yeah.
ready. Yeah. And I opened the door and there's nothing. And there's nobody running. You can usually hear people running. There's like grass. I mean, there's leaves, like
Yeah,
crumbly
yeah, yeah.
leaves, like all
Yeah,
over the place. Like I
yeah.
live, like I know my area. And it was the same thing. It was a knock at almost at the same, like if not at the same spot. And it did a thing. And I will tell you that after that, I said, I'm not going to turn on my Halloween lights for a bit. And
Oh,
so I went a few weeks without turning them on.
good.
And ever since then, I've never heard the knock again. But it was
Wow.
twice, 2 days in a row. And I
Wow.
said, okay, and I'm not crazy because my daughter heard it my
Yeah,
daughter heard
right.
it the second time. So like, I'm just like,
Yeah,
and I felt it. So I was like,
yeah,
something's here. I don't know what that was.
yeah.
I'm done. So that happened. And then my last story, well, there's another one. Oh my God, there's so many stories. So then my husband is doing his thing. He's doing a delivery. And this time it's a little earlier. So it's like
Yeah.
around 9 o'clock at night, but it's dark at this point
Mhm.
because it's still like
Yeah.
wintry almost, like
Mhm.
sort of
Oh,
winter area. Oh my gosh. And this one he called me. So he's dropping off this food at this sort of like trailer like situation in the middle of the woods, somewhere like 20 minutes from here, right? It's like
okay.
wooded area. This was
Yeah.
all woods over in that area. It's an area called Monte Ocha. And he drops it off. And as soon as he drops, like he's like going to drop off the food in the front of the door. He hasn't let go of it yet. And as soon as he steps onto the porch, he hears a howl, like a yell, a yowl. I don't know. It is very loud, he said. He said it was so
Yeah.
loud that I felt it in my ears. I felt it in my body. I felt like it was all over the place at the same time. He's like, I have never been so scared in my life. He ran to his
Yeah.
car, like he dropped the food, he ran to the car, he locked the car, he locked himself in the car, and he called me, and he was like still shaking. Like he was like, I don't know what the hell I just heard. He was
Right,
like,
right.
it was loud, something, blah, blah, blah. And I get excited. Like, I'm just like, oh my God. did you hear Bigfoot? So I'm like, okay. I was like, you maybe heard Bigfoot. So I started looking for clips of like Bigfoot
Yeah,
noises,
sure. Yeah.
and he identifies one of them. And he was like, it was
Mm.
that. He was like, it was
Wow.
exactly that. And I
What?
said, holy crap,
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
probably heard of Bigfoot. And he was just like, that was scary. He's like, it was everywhere. It was inside me. It was like, he's like, I've
Mm,
never heard
mm,
anything like that in my life. And I was like,
mm.
well, sir, welcome to America. We got Bigfoot. So I was just like, that is really cool. I was very excited. He took me to see the place. Like we went to the house. He sent me his
Yeah,
location. I saved the location. I was like, we're
yeah,
going
yeah,
there
yeah.
again. I want to see this. And
Right.
where I saw it, like there was some houses, like it wasn't like it was completely, like far
Mm.
from other homes or
Yeah,
anything
right.
like that. But there
Yeah.
was like the back of the house was wooded, like there was some woods. And I swear, are you okay? Okay, daughter. I swear on my father's grave that I looked to the woods and something moved. Like
Mm.
there was movement
Right.
in the woods. Of course,
Ooh.
was it a person? Maybe. You understand? I don't know. Could have been. It was dark, like inside the woods. It was a tall figure, whatever it was. I don't know how tall, but it was pretty
Yeah.
large. And I don't know. I didn't see any other features. You understand? I couldn't tell if it was broad or
Yeah.
like what. It was movement.
Mhm.
And so I was
Mhm.
like, okay, that's cool. And then we just left because I didn't want to stick around to find out. So we just left. But that
Right.
felt very like, yeah, that felt very it felt very validating for him, and it felt very validating for me too. Like just like, oh, okay, like something's going on here. Like we just probably don't know. And then the last thing that happened, and this one I don't think it's a cryptid. I think he actually saw cougars. There are railroad tracks uh just down the street from where we are. So 39th, there's a railroad that crosses it. So there's these tracks, and the tracks like you look down and you look on both sides, north, south, and it's just all woods. Like it's just woods, like usually these tracks are. And he said that it's kind of late, maybe like 11 o'clock at night, so it's not that late. And that section of the street it's not very busy, especially at night. So he says that he's with another vehicle and they're about to go on a stoplight, but the vehicle runs the yellow and he keeps going, and my husband stops at the stop.
Yeah.
The vehicle goes forward, and before he crosses the train tracks, this is probably about a quarter mile in, the vehicle stops.
Mm.
Like it just like full stops in the middle of the road. And my husband was
Yeah.
like, that's weird. And when my husband sees like there was these two figures, these two
Mm.
things that came, and they were like crouched down
Okay.
and they were walking on the
Okay.
street. Yeah. And he was like, they
Yeah.
were walking on the street very
Okay.
just kind of like hunched, and they were walking, and there was two of
Yeah.
them. And he's like, and they crossed from one side of the railroad to the other. He's like, I couldn't see it fully, but he's like, you can see the silhouette of it
Mm.
from where I was. And he's like, and as I approached it, like obviously this thing crossed, I couldn't really see it up close. He's like, I can tell you there were two, and it was like crouched, and it kind of looked, he's like, it kind of looked
Mm.
like a cat. I was
Yeah.
like, okay. He's like, a big cat. And he said that when he kept going, the car was still stopped. And he's like, I kept driving and I looked at the driver, and the driver just stared at me and his mouth was open. He was just like, the
Yeah.
driver was in shock. And I was
Uh-huh.
just like, I wonder what he saw. But I told him, I was like, you may have just seen two cougars. I mean, they are
Cougar.
nocturnal,
Yeah.
like, yeah, mountain lions, like, or panthers, I guess, like Florida panthers. You may have seen the Florida panther, two of them. I mean, it's not like
Yeah.
so that one I kind of like, I don't know if that was really a cryptid. I'm leaning more toward that was just a very rare sighting of a panther.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
guy was probably just as shocked. I was like, damn, you should have stopped and asked the guy. He's like, with what English? And I was like, you know enough English when you want to. Should have asked him. So, whatever. But
Right.
that so far has been like his experiences, I guess our
Ooh.
experiences here in Gainesville. And he tells me every now and then, he's like, you should just come with me. I'm like, yeah, what are we gonna do with our daughter? She's not gonna. You understand? Like, I'm just gonna go.
Yeah, right, right, yeah.
She's gonna fall asleep in the car. He's like, you need to see these stuff. Like, I want you to see this. And I was like,
Sure, right,
it's
right.
fine. I'll live vicariously through you
Yeah,
and know that I believe
yeah.
everything that you say. But but it's been
That
cool. It's been interesting.
oh, that's amazing. So before we wrap up, I want to tell you, and this is my way of getting Deborah back on the show. I'm sneaky that way. Here are, and I'm not going to get into full all because this would take another show. Which again, this I'm sneaky that way to get Deborah back on. So here are Florida cryptids. So you're wondering, man, Florida's
There are a few of
cryptids?
them.
They do.
Yeah.
So the most well known is the skunk ape.
Right.
So the skunk ape, basically, and like I said, we'll do a show on this because I know Deborah would want to look into it and stuff. And
Yes.
she did the puck wedgie. Go back. I can't remember what episode that was. I think it was like 70 something. She did the puck wedgie. Scared the crap out of me. The puck wedgie. Listen to that episode when Deborah did research on that. It was amazing research, and she read a scary story that gave me
Yes.
nightmares. But anyway, skunk ape. That's like Bigfoot's smelly cousin, called the skunk ape. This is really hilarious. Florida looks like they've said, "Hey, skunk ape, we can make some money off of you." So they actually have, and I'm not kidding you, on westpalmbeach.com, they go like Taylor Swift, Mamma Mia, Justin Timberlake are like coming to West Palm Beach, and then they go, "Here's the article on the skunk ape." And they talk about Florida's Bigfoot. There's been many sightings. It's basically, like I said, Bigfoot's stinky cousin. If you smell something like a skunk or just something really smelling bad, and you hear it does howl, by the way, so it's your husband maybe, and what you saw, because it looks like Bigfoot. People said, but it just is very reclusive. And it is, and this is just basic information, and it stinks. Like you can smell it coming. It's like a boys' locker room coming at you. Like one of those high
my
school
husband
locker
did.
rooms.
My husband mentioned the smell too. I forgot to say that he did smell something too. So
Oh,
I kind of he did. But
so
who knows?
the other thing which your husband might have saw is the Wampus cat. It is a cat-like cryptid. Folklore says, well, it basically looks like it's Cherokee folklore, which okay. Basically, just reading this really quick, it's like a cat-like cougar. Yep, it's a half cat, half dog hybrid. So the small, right, a dog. So, if you've seen a mountain lion or at the zoo or wherever, or just go on Google and just whatever, go on YouTube, they have the big paws, they're coming at you, man. You're not going to win that fight. But with a dog, smaller paws, like, we have a black lab and, so the front have the smaller paws and then the back paws are the cougar paws. So, okay, what your husband was talking to that gentleman, maybe it saw the Wampus cat. Then one of the other ones is the Mahamba. It is known simply as the giant crocodile. It looks. They said it is 50 to 60 feet. That's a hell of a crocodile. And it is supposedly in the Florida Everglades and everything like that. Now, those are the three big ones. They do also mention you do have Bigfoot or a Bigfoot. Also, there are a bunch of like sea snakes or whatever you want to call them. Also, there's a huge snake. That I did pull that up, because of the smaller ones. But the big one is the skunk ape, followed by the Wampus cat, followed by the Mahamba. They're, I think Florida's scary enough because, and correct me if I'm wrong, but is it the anacondas which people were keeping as pets and then they let them go and now you can like hunt them and get some money? Is that true? I don't know.
Burmese pythons.
Oh,
pythons.
python. Okay, I didn't know it was the anaconda. I didn't remember.
Fun fact, I was a volunteer in the Everglades for a few months when I was a bit younger, and I worked in a lab. My research was really boring. I was collecting lichen samples and identifying lichen for the park. But
Sure.
I
I like it.
in the lab, yeah, got it. But
Like,
they, this Burmese python or the python sort of situation's been going on for years now. And they
mhm.
had a program already in set place, and I got to see when they brought in a huge ass python that they caught.
Dang.
And they open them up. They open them up. They do some stuff with it. At least this program did. I'm not sure what they're doing now. But this was like more than 10 years ago. And so they opened them up and they would like find what they were eating and things like that. And obviously the point is to kill them because they're just wreaking havoc all over the Everglades. So that was very interesting.
Yeah. Well,
Ethnicity.
gender. I do.
So, yeah, my parents are Cuban. I was born and raised in Miami. My father and mother were born in Havana, Cuba. My father came when he was already older. I think he was 40 years old when he got to the United States. It was 1980. And then my mom came when she was younger. She was basically raised here. She was 5 years old.
Okay.
She came in 1967, but she came through the plane, like over, in a plane. And my father's the one who came here through the Mariel boat lift. So he was the one that was like basically thrown out of Cuba. Like he was one of the people thrown out of Cuba and he made
Okay.
it to the United States and then they met and
Right.
I was born and my sister and that's it. So
So,
Cubana.
no, the reason I mentioned that is because you probably have some stories or familiar with like the different cryptids associated with the different
Yes.
legends there that in Cuba that what is, boy, I'm drawing a blank, the cryptid there that like eats sheep and stuff. It's a little, oh god, no, I am totally drawing a
Chupacabra.
blank. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hmm.
And that's something I was thinking about. I'm like, "Well, maybe we should do that on a show, right? Maybe that's
Oh, we
something we
should.
should talk about, right?
We should talk about chupacabras. We should talk about, I know actually more Dominican lore than Cuban lore because, again, my parents
Okay.
left Cuba and kind of just never cared to talk about a lot of their stuff in Cuba.
Oh, I
But
get
my
that.
husband's Dominican. Yeah. My husband's Dominican and I lived in the Dominican Republic for 3 years. And there is some interesting stuff that they have going on. They have something called the vaca, they have la ciguapa, they have galipotes, and it's
Mhm.
just very interesting lore that I'd be happy to break down for people.
Yeah, I think that'd be an interesting show as well as talk about more in depth on the Florida cryptids and stuff because I
Yeah.
know we're all interested in that. Do a little more in depth on that, and kind of matching your story. Uh, so tell me about Paradigma. What you got coming up, and what's new?
So I've been sort of focusing on shifting gears a little bit. I love the platform that I have now on Instagram. I have a platform on TikTok and Facebook too, but my favorite and where I have the most, I guess, impact has been Instagram. And so right now I've focused a lot on, you know, doing what Instagram has you do, which is like create the small content reels and get people to try to really like you and stuff. But I realized that I'm not resonating with that type of content as much as I resonate with more educational and research stuff. Um, and I think I have a lot to really share when it comes to the stuff that I work on, which is again the more, you know, subjective and spiritual aspects of the
Mm,
paranormal. And so I'm
right.
actually going to switch gears and hopefully within by the end of the summer start a YouTube channel and really start to get some more long form content in there and more information and hopefully build a community on there. And
Love it.
my goal, right, is to really expand my knowledge base and my reach in the community and get
Yeah.
people to come on the show or like the channel, I guess, and talk about these experiences, and together we can, process these things together if people are interested. I would do that for
Yeah.
free instead of charging like a one-on-one or anything. And of course,
Mhm.
people can remain anonymous doing so. So that's always like
Mhm.
con- confidentiality is like
Yeah. Yeah.
one of my primary like things. And other than that, the show is just going to focus on talking about the paranormal, presenting information and resources when it comes to the paranormal, and providing a safe space for people to feel heard, believed, not alone, not judged, and feel like they can really talk about their experiences. And also just hopefully destigmatize and dispel the misinformation that is rampant in the paranormal community, and get people to see the paranormal in a different light and sort of just like change the paradigm around it.
Yeah,
That's
I
it.
love that. Well, I look forward
Hmm.
to that. And like I said, I look forward to having you back on the show, talk about Florida cryptids, talk about, some other folklore and some other things, that we all love that are fun to do and share with the audience who may not know that and everything. And
Yes.
it's always special to talk to you, Deborah.
Oh, thank
I
you. I
love
love being
all the
here.
things you're doing, and you're awesome. And again, we always say hi to your ghost. I don't think your place is haunted. So, but you
No,
can say hi to your ghost, and then
my
we'll,
spirit guide.
and then stay spooky. Thanks, Deborah. Love you.
Bye.
I'll
Thank
talk to you later.
you.
Bye bye.